Ding! Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the History Happy Hour. And 1 second here, I'm just gonna let me.
Is Dan about to join? I don't see Dan.
Oh, Dan's on. Can you not see him?
Nope.
Hang on. We'll get it.
Can't hear him.
How about now?
Nope.
Can you hear Dan? Can we hear you? Hello, test. Hang on.
Hello?
Will get this.
Test.
Hello, Brass. No go with
No go.
I can hear Brass.
All right.
Should I
Yeah, jump back on.
jump out? Okay.
Damn it. All right. How's it going, Dan?
Amazing. How are you guys doing?
I'm good. Cheers to you, my friend. What are you drinking?
I've got three things right now.
You've got three things right now?
Yes, I've got Guinness, obviously. And then I've got this whiskey that I found.
Amanda, can you hear him?
So it's with Jameson's and a local brewery here in Chicago. You can see the Chicago flag. Right?
Oh.
Brewed in their barrels, which is amazing. And then for the colonists, I'm doing a slushy gin and tonic, which
fair.
is out of this world.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Found this on Instagram.
Chicago, we need to get on your level.
Yeah, I know, right? So yeah, I mean, Dan, I can't say I matched you.
No,
But what I do have is also Jameson, though not the Chicago one that you have. And I'm gonna be drinking it, with ice. But I'm also gonna be drinking a delicious water, refreshing water, so that I can keep myself hydrated because it's really hot here in Sacramento.
are you gonna believe this? Look what I got.
Oh, nice! Yo, Brassy is drinking Jameson.
Absconded with a bottle of Jameson.
No.
Dan, can you hear her?
Welcome. We're all doing Jameson.
And then with that, I'm gonna pour it into my my latte made with maple syrup.
Amazing! All three of us are drinking. My
It's
God,
kind of a thing
this
now.
is the first. And we remembered to do this during the beginning of the show. Like, we're off to a really strong start, minus, kind of the technical problems which continually plague us. But you know what? Whatever. Also, Dan, kudos on your Fenian ensemble there.
Really
I'm
something.
wearing my
do you like it with the? I even did the Sam Brown belt.
Oh yeah.
Really?
What's that?
I mean,
what's the Sam Brown belt?
Well, it's to help hold your ammunition.
Oh, okay, got it. Stupid me. All right, got it. So I'm wearing my Heroico Batallón de San Patricio T-shirt. It's the emblem for the Mexican. Oh, that's nice. The Mexican Irish Brigade. And it's from the Mexican American War in 1847. And I thought it was a good way to kind of like roll into like what the constant Irish. Oh my God!
There's so many layers, Alf. We didn't even know. Damn.
Amazing. Okay. All right. We'll get into your pins in just a second, Dan.
We'll get into it.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that Brass's icon today is the Countess Constance Markiewicz and Markiewicz. Anyway, Mrs. Gore Booth.
I think we should just right now say
Let's do it.
Pronunciations are going to be
sorry to everybody.
Pronunciations are going to be horrible, and I put like a couple of clues in there as to what the pronunciations might be for me, but like it's not. There's no reassurance that it's going to be spot on. But let's really quickly say that Constance Markiewicz, who's Brassy's symbol for this one, was an amazing leader of the 1916 rebellion. She was the daughter of British nobility, and she married a Polish count, and then decided that she wasn't into the royal thing. So she lived in Ireland. She was a revolutionary. She was a nationalist. She was a suffragist. She was a socialist. She was the first woman elected to Parliament in the UK. She was the first. She was in the first Dáil of Ireland, which is their like House of Congress, their House of Representatives. And she was the first minister level representative, female representative in Europe. Like, she was a groundbreaker and a badass lady. And she fought in the 1916 rebellion in this ensemble that we're seeing here, which is the costume of the Irish Volunteers. So, badass woman. And I think it speaks to a lot of the like really interesting intersections of the 1916 rebellion. But before we get into the 1916 rebellion, Dan, I am going to time you here, and you have 5 minutes to talk about anything that happened, any rebellions that happened prior to 1916. Go.
Okay, so Ireland has basically been in a state of rebellion since the beginning. So the English, the Scottish, and the Irish kingdoms were constantly fighting each other, constantly invading each other. The English, as we learned a little bit last week, sort of gained the upper hand on both the other two countries and started taking control.
And I would say, just
really,
just to jump in, I won't count this against your time.
Reclaiming my time.
Reclaiming my time. I think one of the important things is last time we talked about how what's his name, Oliver Cromwell took over, right? And Oliver Cromwell had no patience for Ireland because they were a bunch of Catholics, right? And so a lot of the real nasty like nastiness. I mean, not that it was beautiful to begin with, but a lot of the real nastiness between England and Ireland came to a head during immediately following what we talked about, immediately after following the beheading of Charles I. So anyway, sorry, go on. I just wanted to tie it back to the previous episode.
Perfect. So, really, we talked about Charles I, but part of it is, Henry VIII and Elizabeth I really started to crack down on Ireland and all of their Irish behaviors and got all over them. And then since then, England was more of the dominant, from what I know, the dominant country over Ireland. But what I think is so interesting is you have a major rebellion in 1798, which corresponds with the French Revolution and the American Revolution. You have a major rebellion in 1848, which is part of the rebellions in Europe, but you also, there's also the famine going on. And then you have the 1916 rebellion, which to me also corresponds with the socialism. So the Irish rebellions are very much in tune with the spirit of the times going on in the West.
Absolutely. And I think the Irish rebellion Irish rebellions are basically the failed versions of other successful rebellions, right? So yes. you have the 1700s, you have the Irish rebellion is what the US one could have been, right? It got squashed. It was stillborn, led by a Protestant too, which is, I think, really interesting.
Right. Well, and that's the interesting thing. Like a lot of these, when we think of Irish rebellions, we think it's sort of a Catholic nationalist movement. There's a lot of Protestantism up until probably the modern day. You know what I mean? Like, it's interesting.
Well, and I would say that so I think all of that is really important to remember. And also, I think one of the important things that we need to and something I'll keep hammering home is the idea of a colony and the insidiousness of colonialism at any level, right? Ireland is in Europe, and yet it was basically a third world country and treated as such by its colonial parent. And this idea that our way of ruling and we as a people are better than your way of ruling, it is so detrimental to the health and well-being of communities and nations, that even in that close proximity of Ireland and England, you see how devastating colonialism was. And so the reason there's all of these things, these rebellions, is because like you have the same setups that you had in Australia, right? Like we talked about in our Australian thing, the same kind of setup where they treat the colonials as like other, like dismissive, easy to dismiss other, and then they kind of assume these leading roles. And part of the problem with Ireland is that it's not a faraway colony, right? Like if
right.
If the person sitting 6 people down from me is acting up, I'm like, hey, stop that. And if I have to get up, I have to get up and go over there, right? But if the person next to me is misbehaving, I can just go, hey, stop that, right? And that's basically what happened to Ireland. Every time they started something, it was always stopped right before it got any traction, because it was right next door. And so it's just a constant like of tragedies and still
right. And you have to address Ireland when it acts up, because the spillover is what, one day, right?
Yeah.
Like it's so easy to spill over it back into England and Great Britain, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if you have a socialist revolution in Ireland, you'll have peasants breaking wind in the palaces of the mighty.
It takes 3 hours to get from Ireland to England on a boat.
Yeah. So, okay. So we've set up sort of we've done a great job, by the way. High five. All right. So let's just really talk about the early 1913, I think, is a good place to start. Because from 1913 to 1916, there is the beginning of like the talk of rebellion and all sorts of the political and military factions that end up creating the situation that led to the 1916 rebellion basically fall into place. So 1913 is when home rule starts being floated. Dan, do you want to touch home rule? Do you want to talk to us? Like, what is home rule?
So, what's interesting, and I don't have my dates. So Ireland, as Scotland did, had their own parliaments outside of Westminster, and then I want to say the 1798 rebellion is when Westminster was like, no, you're done. We'll just handle it from here. Thank you. Right. But there was starting to be floated in the late 1800s and early 1900s to return home rule back to Ireland, which would be a parliament, which Scotland has now. I got to be honest. I'm a little ashamed. Does Northern Ireland have its own?
No, they don't. They
parliament?
They have seats in Westminster.
Right. But they don't have their own parliament anymore.
No.
Anymore.
I don't know.
So Ireland, they were floating the idea of sort of basically a parliament returned to Ireland, seated in Dublin. But there was a lot of resistance to it. And then we get to 1916.
Yeah. So home rule is kind of, they're talking about it. They're talking about expanded freedoms for Ireland. And the Irish are like, yeah, you want to talk about it, right? Like it's kind of like, come on, let's get on with this. And what happens though is in 1914, home rule is postponed by
WWI.
That's right, World War I, right? And so World War I kind of puts a hold on everything. And it's important for us, anybody who saw 1917 and saw and understands the devastation caused by World War I, let's put it into perspective here. By 1914, 1916, millions of British have died. Hundreds of thousands of Irish are dying in World War I, right? So the British are conscripting or recruiting people from Ireland to go fight on the Western Front. And that song, "It's a Long Way to Tipperary," right? God, I'm gonna be doing a lot of this, I think, during this entire piece. But anyway, so that song is from that, and it's talking about like the Somme is a long way from Tipperary. And so one of the things that we experience is that there's a lot of death and there's a lot of war weariness as we approach 1916. England is at war with Germany. Irish boys and men are dying in Europe during World War II. And both the British and the Irish are already experiencing some severe war weariness as we walk into Easter of 1916. So I think one of the most interesting things about the Easter Rebellion is just very much like the U.S. Revolutionary War. The Easter Rebellion had just a who's who of thought leaders that were a part of it, right? The intellectual part of the 1916, the intellectual part of 1916 is so important because it really encompasses the totality of what is a European moment, right? So you got to think that the Bolsheviks and the Russian Revolution takes place in 1917. So we're looking at socialism and communism playing a large role in the thinking. Women had just gotten the vote, right? Like suffrage, I think, or did they?
No, I don't think they had the vote. Yeah, but we have the socialism is bubbling so hard, and it explodes really in Ireland, and as we all know, in Russia.
Right.
It's really bubbling, and it's
so show
bubbling within the veterans and the serfs.
There you go. So and veterans and serfs are a really important way of thinking about it because there are a lot of veterans, right? There's a lot of folks coming back from World War I, and there's a lot of serfs. Now, serf is an interesting choice of words because I don't think that the British would ever consider a British person, a British subject, a serf. But that is exactly what they were. And I think situations in Ireland historically were just terrible. And the Irish famine was in cholera outbreaks and plagues and all sorts of some of the worst things that happened during Victorian times happened in Ireland even worse. And that's why the Irish diaspora becomes a really big issue, right? So many Irish were forced to flee Ireland that the idea of an Irish people spread across the globe becomes super important. Boy, I'm really sweating through the shirt. So all of these situations, and I want to take a moment to talk about the proclamation of the Irish Republic, right? Like that's what's on my mug right here.
Right.
And it's Poblach na Éireann, right? And boy, I must have I said it quickly so that I couldn't get it too wrong.
Oh, we're gonna get so
not because I'm fluent in Irish, but because I did not want to dwell on it. But I think it's important that we talk about the signatories, right? The people who signed that in the same way that our Declaration of Independence was signed by our founding fathers. The people who signed the Proclamation of the Irish Republic are considered their founding fathers. And those would be Thomas J. Clark, Sean McDiarmid, oh boy, here we go, Thomas MacDonagh, Patrick Pearse, Eamon Kent, James Connolly, and Joseph Plunkett,
Well, that was pretty easy. They did a good job. I mean, those were easy.
They probably picked them because they were the easier ones to pronounce.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Well, we can't have a founding father who's in Ireland, right? Like you can't. So that was a terrible Irish thing too. Anyway, all right. So basically, these people are a who's who of political thought, of Irish cultural identity. And these names, Plunkett, Colony, Pierce, these are names that are going to become, these are they, right? Like these guys right here on this mug that I got a few years ago, these guys are on here. And it's important to remember that to this day, and this is forming of what modern day Ireland is and what we think of it. So I wanted to make sure that we had those names. And Monday, in April 17th of 1916 is when the draft of the Proclamation of the Irish Republic came to being. And they talk about who is going to form the provisional government, right? Like the government that will eventually take over there's a British thing. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. One thing about the Proclamation of the Irish Republic, which is it was very, very forward thinking. I don't have the text in front of me, but I know. I mean, I've read it. It insisted on equal rights for men and women. Like it was, you know what I mean? It was very forward thinking at its time, which is so interesting.
We will talk about those, like how interesting it is as a foundational document. When we we're gonna play the reading because I think it's important that we do like a full reading. So we'll go through it. And we can talk about it. But yeah, you're right, Dan. And what's interesting is that there is actually there's lines about how religion has been used to divide people instead of unite them. And it's a really progressive document, and it speaks to that age of like super like socialist style thinking.
And what's so interesting is, and this could be a whole nother episode, is how Ireland basically fell into a kind of a, not as bad as Spain, but it fell into a Catholic dictatorship.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, God, it's so interesting. Sorry.
It's so interesting. All right, so let's move in because I think it's important to know that the Easter Rebellion didn't start on Easter Sunday per se. It started on Easter Monday. So I think that's important just timeline wise. But let's get right into it, right? So think about this. This starts on Monday. So let's talk about what happened on Wednesday.
Somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
Yeah, boy. So Monday, the week before, a week before the actual rebellion, they draft the proclamation. They approve the draft of the Proclamation of the Irish Republic. On Wednesday, they assign the people who are going to act as the commandants during Easter week, and everybody agrees it's going to start at 6:30 p.m. on Easter Sunday. It starts at 6 p.m. on Easter Sunday, and we'll get into how do you define did it actually start, right? And that's also part of the issue. By Thursday, there's local leaders find out that there's going to be a plan for a rising, and the kind of moderate folks are just like, hey, let's not do this, right? And so you already see like people going like, wait, let's not do this, right? Like you just ratified this on Monday. Let's take a little bit more than a week.
Right.
Let's take a little bit more than a week to go from like agreeing to do this to actually doing this. And I don't know what the thought process is around something like this, but I'll tell you what, personally, one of the things I hate the most in life is unrealistic, stupid internal deadlines, right? Like somebody's like, let's have this done by Tuesday, and it's like Monday afternoon. And you're just like, what's the difference between having it done Tuesday or Wednesday? We could have a better version of it done on Wednesday. Why do you need it on Tuesday, right? Like arbitrary, stupid or symbolic deadlines. And I think that the stupid symbolic deadline here was Easter.
Yeah, and well, specifically Easter Monday, because it's not a thing we do in the United States. I mean, it's kind of on the East Coast they do it, and they do it in Washington, D.C. with the Easter egg roll. But it's a big deal in the British Isles, right? Like, you're off of school, work is closed. It's a big deal. You get that Monday off.
Got it.
You know what I mean? So, and that's part of why they chose it, because I think they thought people would join up because they didn't have to go to work. Besides the symbolic,
and it makes sense, right? Like, so there you go. Like, come on, guys. Why do we have to wait? Why do we have to wait till like Memorial Day weekend when we can just do it on Easter Monday, right? Like, but that kind of stuff is really, it's good for like, symbolism is important. Don't get me wrong, but so is like not rushing a revolution, right?
Right. The play will be ready when the play is ready.
Exactly. So on Thursday, we already have people going like, hey, maybe not. By Friday of that week, there's already disagreements as to whether or not cold feet, and then they lay the big one on, right? Like, they're like, hey, guess what? We've got a shipment of weapons coming in from Germany, and it's going to be delivered in Cork. It's going to be delivered in Northern Ireland by U-boat, and it's going to be delivered to Dublin by boat. And so we're going to have weapons from Germany that Britain is already at war at. Think about that. Britain's at war with Germany, so they're distracted. Irish men are dying fighting against the Germans, and yet they're allying themselves with the Germans to get these weapons. And if you are passionate about your cause, you sometimes become impractical about the realities of the political situation and the situation on the ground. And I think that that's something that if you are a historian or if you're a fan of history, you notice consistently that like that revolutionaries and people who mostly failed revolutionaries get really excited and have like a little echo chamber of what they're doing. And unfortunately that echo chamber doesn't match a lot of the realities outside. Right. And so one of the things that happens here is that I think cool, we're getting weapons from Germany, but who are we taking weapons for? It's just going to be another in a series of issues that's gonna haunt this rebellion in particular. So everybody's like, oh, okay, there are weapons coming in from Germany. Well, then let's do this because we need weapons. But even then, there's leaders in court going like, no, don't do it. So the U-boat...
I think the British had word of this, too. They were starting to mount up the garrisons.
Okay.
They knew something was boiling, and they were starting to pull veterans out of... They were pulling people out of France to reinforce Dublin. They had a feeling that something was coming. And that was also part of the problem.
Well, that would explain the stuff that I come up with. I didn't know that, like some of the stuff that comes up later. I did not know that. So all right. So situation is the British are probably on to you already. The U-boat lands. The three guys, including Roger Casement, and we'll talk about good old Roger Casement here in just a second. So the three folks land. The U-boat lands, and the three people that rowed to shore to make contact with the leaders in the area with the U-boat landed get captured. And so like it's almost immediate. Like they land and they get picked up, including Roger Casement. And I do definitely want to talk about Roger Casement.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Fascinating person.
This is Sir Roger Casement. Sir Roger Casement. Roger Casement.
Holy cow.
Yeah, Roger Casement was knighted by King George, I think it was at the time. He was there. It is right. Roger Casement was basically the first person to create like human rights commissions. Mm-hmm. Roger Casement blew the lid on the Belgians' treatment of people in the Congo. Mm-hmm. And he did the same in Peru at the treatment of indigenous people in Peru. Roger Casement was somebody who was for people and for humanity and for human rights and for the treatment of people in a decent way.
But very British. He gave the funeral oration. I don't know if it was in Dublin. Gave the funeral oration for Queen Victoria at one of her memorial services.
Right.
So very British, like very loyal to the crown.
And Alf, his birthday, September 1st.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
Oh, how about that? Look at that. That's my birthday.
Years before you, but September 1st.
That's the best one. Yeah. That's a good one, dude.
So Roger Casement, you look at a picture there, it cuts a dashing figure.
Good Lord. I mean, about swallowed my gold tooth when you put that picture up.
So
handsome. Oh.
Yeah. Also, I think when you're this dashing and this complicated, you won't be surprised that he was also gay.
Right. The Black Diaries, which are a fascinating thing.
Kept like diaries about his encounters. So
it's on Wikipedia.
Lucky enough to be
Look it up.
Yeah. So and there's and if you read there's a book called King Leopold's Ghost about the Belgian Congo, and there's an accompanying documentary. If you don't feel like reading the book, I would recommend both those a lot. A lot of Roger Casement's history and his sad ending.
Sorry, just an aside. If you like Apocalypse Now, you have to read King Leopold's Ghost, because then it will make even more sense.
Yep.
Wow.
So Roger Casement, I wanted to make sure that we gave Sir Roger Casement a nod, because he gets pulled out of the 1916 rebellion right off the bat, and in fact, he getting pulled out from the 1916 rebellion sets the stage for a series of failures. But he was an incredible individual, abolitionist when it came to slavery, human rights, dynamo, and obviously handsome and gay. So like this is really what we all want out of our revolutionaries, and we had him in Sir Roger, and unfortunately, like most Irish revolutionaries, the whole thing was abortive. So
also one thing, Protestant, not Catholic.
Yeah, I don't think he would have been knighted if he had been Catholic.
Right, knighted by King George V.
Yeah,
like big time guy, like not just somebody on the side.
Yeah, this was a celeb. Yeah. So anyway, so Roger Casement is the one that gets caught with the U-boats in, off the coast of Ireland, trying to smuggle German weapons in. Womp womp. So, yeah, like what a mess, right?
Get a real trombone out and do a womp womp. Why
not? I will. You know what? Next time I'll have my trombone ready for womp womps.
For womp womps.
Because I should have had it for this. You know what? I'm gonna go get it because. There's so much womp womp.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Oh, this is perfect.
Oh, hilarious.
Dance, the layers, the costuming. I can't get over it.
Yeah, there's
cleared out.
Whatever. Anyway.
When did you get a trombone?
Oh, damn.
Oh, dude. We'll talk. Anyway.
Excuse me.
So anyway. So, maybe I should have learned how to womp womp before I offered it. Anyway.
It's kind of a womp womp in itself. It's meta.
Yeah, it is meta. Thank you. So they're not getting the weapons. Long story short, not getting weapons. And so not only that, but Sir Roger's shipment gets found. And then also the this is also like a classic story of the Irish Rebellion, the ship, the Odd, is supposed to sail into Dublin and just dock, and then people are supposed to rush in and get the weapons and spread them out.
Right.
But they kind of sail in a little bit early, and so they've got to kill some time. And so
it's also a German ship sailing under a Norwegian flag with a different name.
Yeah.
Which we can look up.
It is. And so you can imagine like they're just kind of like walking, like, look normal, sail normal. Oh God, there's a destroyer. Okay, just turn around, which is something
I don't know. Fly casual.
Yeah. So basically, like they get found out like that, and so no weapons are coming, right?
It's an older code, but it checks out.
Yeah. So there's no weapons coming in. It's already a bit of a mess. Shipment from weapons stopped by the British in Kerry. Infighting continues as word spreads that the Germans aren't coming. They confront Patrick Pearse. Patrick Pearse is is one of the two honchos, right? Like, it's Patrick Pearse and Connolly are the two main guys, and Patrick Pearse is confronted, and they're like, we can't do this without weapons, right? And this is on Saturday, the day before, right? Meanwhile, the British are like, okay, well, we've caught these shipments coming in, these very stupid shipments coming in from Germany. So we know that the shipments didn't make it. So surely they're going to cancel. And so everybody goes on vacation for Easter weekend because they're like, hey, we stopped it. Surely they're not going to go ahead with this after we.
But never underestimate the Irish.
No, at your peril.
Yeah,
at your peril.
I said we're going to do it. We're going to do it.
It hurts my heart. It really does. It really does. And then Sunday morning, a Republican newspaper publishes a countermanding order from one of the local leaders saying, hey, whoa, hey, yo, it's not happening. Everybody go home. Sunday morning.
It's almost comical, really.
It's so sad. It's so sad. And what happens is, actually on Saturday, like, factions went off and they went to Cork, I don't know, Waterford. I'm just going to pronounce the places I can. Limerick, Kerry, Cork, and Tipperary. All of those places received the countermanding order saying it's not happening. So
they stood down.
Basically, they're telling everybody to stand down.
But not everybody did, because like Galway was still on alert.
Right. So already we have in the same thing that happened here. We had a little confusion. They had confusion, right? Like, newspapers are saying it's not happening. Other leaders are sending news out to the country that it's not happening, and yet at 9 a.m. on Sunday, the military council begins a 4-hour meeting discussing what to do, because they know that there's been a countermanding order. And yet they come to the decision that they will go ahead with the rising beginning at noon on Easter Monday. No way.
Forget it. I'm going home.
Yeah, exactly. Like I have to say, like I'm a big fan of James Connolly. Like, show your book again, Dan, because I love that pamphlet book.
Let me see. Hold on. I'm gonna have to pick it up. It fell down between the couch and the
okay, don't worry about it. but if you guys saw,
it's called Socialism, Easy Socialism.
Yeah,
Socialism Made Easy.
Socialism Made Easy.
It's great.
Right?
Yeah. I
mean, James Connolly was an amazing thinker about socialism and about the role of the worker. Like, if you ever get a chance, even follow. There's a James Connolly Twitter account that's like,
oh wow.
Yeah, like,
I'm into that.
Yeah, it's amazing. So anyway, so I would personally, I would be just like, I would not partake in this. I would not partake in this. believing what I believe in the self-determination of people, believing in the leadership, like being like intellectuals and smart people who have the good of their country and of their people in mind. I would not be a part of this because there's been a countermanding order and our weapons have been seized. It's best to everybody go underground for a few months, come back, and we'll do this next Easter, right? Like enough of these silly internal deadlines, or 2 weeks from now when we can figure out how to get the weapons, right? So anyway, regardless of that, the meeting decides to go ahead with the rising beginning at noon on Easter Monday. And at 2:30 p.m., the citizen army, as it stands in Dublin, gathers at Liberty Hall. And I have a picture of this because I think it's important, because it shows like some really important, like it shows that the heart is in the right place, right? Like we serve neither king nor Kaiser, but Ireland. And it shows here like a group of people in uniform and a group of supporters, and it says we are something, and I think that's swell.
So this is Liberty Hall.
Yeah.
Because never mind. There was some interesting things about the College of Surgeons that went on with the students.
Say it.
Well, I don't know. It looks like this building. I'd have to look it up again. Maybe we can post it something later. But it feels like this is the thing. Like some students were just, yeah. Well, you know how college kids are. Everyone loves a good spring riot.
Yeah. Just burn a couch.
Right.
Just so you guys know, all three of us right here took part in some good couch burnings.
I only drove around in my car and honked the horn. I lit nothing on fire.
I didn't either, but I was part of 3 riots.
Okay, well that's fair. You were there. Yeah, I think I was gone that next year.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah. I was part of 1.
I felt
2 Broncos,
alive.
1
I'm not gonna lie
just
to you.
Enough is enough. Let's party.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. Those are the best. Enough is enough. Let's party. So anyway, so what you see here, it's a really pretty picture of some really like devoted people, but this does not a revolution make, right? And I think it's kind of like a precursor. And this was a really symbolic moment too in the whole thing. Yeah, it's kind of, I feel like it's kind of a sad picture. So the Citizen Army meets outside of Dublin in 1914. Sorry, this is them in 1914. This is in 1916, but it gives you a feel for who they are. So in by 2:40, by 5 o'clock p.m., 200 members of the Citizen Army take part in a route march through the center of the city. 200, okay, 200. So
Dublin's a big place.
Dublin is a big place, yeah. Like 200 people marching is a lot when they're marching together, but it's not when you think about taking a whole city. That evening, the British hold a conference at the Vice-Regal Lodge in Phoenix Park. That's where all the weapons are. That's where like a lot of the important government offices also are. And they all decide they don't need to take preemptive action. They're bluffing, right? Surely they're not going to do this. So comes Monday of Rebellion Day, right? And so members of the Irish Volunteers start to gather, right? And they gather at Liberty Hall. They gather around St. Stephen's Green. St. Stephen's Green is going to be a big big place where there's a lot of battles that go back and forth. Basically,
we'll
there
see some pictures of St. Stephen's Greens later.
Sorry?
We have pictures of St. Stephen's later.
Do we? Okay, great.
Do we?
I don't know. We don't. Anything you want to talk about it? What's up with St. Stephen?
No. It's just it was just a very central place. When we get into the Battle of Dublin, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
What's fantastic about St. Stephen's is one of the best hotels in Dublin is right on St. Stephen's, and it was just
Dan the Revolutionary.
Always drinking tea and eating my cake.
Very nice. Very nice. So yeah. So All right. So basically, by 11:40 a.m., they take charge of the four courts. They take charge of the Dublin Union, and by noon, the GPO, the General Post Office, is seized by rebels. Now, just remember, the GPO and the post office and these government buildings are the sign, and again, symbolism plays a large role in a lot of this, are the sign of British occupation. The real sign of British occupation of Dublin is Dublin Castle.
Yes,
but they don't take that right away because
that's a
castle and it's fortified, right? So
machine guns.
Yeah, exactly. So by noon, they've taken all of these important places in the city. They also attack the magazine in Fort Phoenix Park, where we just talked about. And they don't accomplish much, except they kill the teenage son of the fort's commandant. So, and the thing is, the British are going to be really good about going like, oh, is that an atrocity? Did I just see an atrocity? Are people going to be sad about that? Let's just check mark that, right?
Right.
Go ahead.
Every little thing that they did is amazing. Just they couldn't have done it worse, really.
Yeah.
Right? That's what's sad about the whole thing.
They could have, but there was definitely and ultimately. And we'll talk about this later, but like yeah, I mean, was martyrdom the goal from the start?
Maybe,
right?
That's a good point. Never thought about that in those terms.
They're Catholic, right?
Right.
So martyrdom is not entirely like anyway. So rebels attack.
Yes, we'll get into that because how this ends. Sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No problem. So then, by noon, they've taken over all of these major spots, including a bakery, right?
Yeah. Smart.
Right. So like they're like, oh, this is happening. I guess this is happening, right? And by 12:30 p.m. on Easter Sunday, the British are like, oh, I guess we're doing this. And so they begin that the mobile column of the 3rd Reserve Cavalry is sent to Dublin. And now you think about the volunteers that we see in front of Liberty Hall, and then you think about what the 3rd Reserve of Cavalry is. And 3rd Reserve of Cavalry implies a few things, that there is a 1st and 2nd Reserve of Cavalry, and also that there is a unit of cavalry that is not in reserve, right? Mm-hmm. And when you think about that kind of mobilization, you start thinking about what they just got into, right?
Do you know how to get on a horse? Yes, I do. Excellent. You're in the 3rd Reserve.
Yeah. No. The reserves are the British, not the Irish.
Right. But that's the thing, though.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, right.
We're so far down the line of cavalry.
Yeah. Exactly. So, but what we're saying here is that it really it really starts going down. So at 12:45, Pierce appears outside of the General Post Office, the GPO, and proclaims the establishment of the Irish Republic. And I'm going to take this opportunity to show you guys the proclamation of the Irish Republic, read out loud by one of the descendants of the original fighters of this 1916 rebellion during the centennial.
I saw this. I was there for this for real. I was in Dublin for this. I'm excited.
Man, I just spilled whiskey all over myself. All right. So I'm going to show this because I think that the words are important, and I think it's important for all of us to kind of listen, right? Listen to how progressive this is. Listen to how amazing it is. So here we go.
Captain Gallagher, who will read the proclamation. His grandfather's war of independence while evading capture.
Died of sepsis while evading capture.
Ireland, the provisional government of the Irish Republic, to the people of Ireland. Irish men and Irish women, in the name of God and of the dead generations from which she receives her old tradition of nationhood, Ireland, through us, summons her children to her flag and strikes for her freedom. Having organised and trained her manhood through her secret revolutionary organisation, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, and through her open military organisations, the Irish Volunteers and the Irish Citizen Army, having patiently perfected her discipline, having resolutely waited for the right moment to reveal itself, she now seizes that moment, and, supported by her exiled children in America, and by gallant allies in Europe, but relying the first on her own strength, she strikes in full confidence of victory. We declare the right of the people of Ireland to the ownership of Ireland and to the unfettered control of Irish destinies to be sovereign and indefeasible. The long usurpation of that right by a foreign people and government has not extinguished the right, nor can it ever be extinguished, except by the destruction of the Irish people. In every generation, the Irish people have asserted their right to national freedom and sovereignty. 6 times during the past 300 years, they have asserted it in arms. Standing on that fundamental right, and again declaring it in arms in the face of the world, we hereby proclaim the Irish Republic as a sovereign, independent state, and we pledge our lives and the lives of our comrades in arms to the cause of its freedom, of its welfare, and of its exaltation among the nations. The Irish Republic is entitled to and hereby claims the allegiance of every Irish man and Irish woman. The Republic guarantees religious and civil liberty, equal rights and equal opportunities to all its citizens, and declares its resolve to pursue the happiness and prosperity of the whole nation and of all its parts, cherishing all the children of the nation equally, and oblivious of the differences carefully fostered by an alien government which have divided the minority from the majority in the past, until our arms have brought the opportune moment for the establishment of a permanent national government, representative of the whole people of Ireland and elected by the suffrages of all her men and women. The provisional government, hereby constituted, will administer the civil and military affairs of the Republic in trust for the people. We place the cause of the Irish Republic under the protection of the Most High God, whose blessing we invoke upon our arms, and we pray that no one who serves that cause will dishonour it by cowardice, inhumanity, or rapine. In this supreme hour, the Irish nation must, by its valour and discipline, and by the readiness of its children to sacrifice themselves for the common good, prove itself worthy of the august destiny to which it is called. Signed on behalf of the Provisional Government, Thomas J. Clark, Sean Mock Gerda, Thomas McDonough, P.H. Pearce, Eamon Camp, James Connolly, Joseph Plunkett.
So yeah, so I think that's like it's a hell of a document.
It is.
And
I was sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry. The missus and I were there for that reading.
Wow.
And it was out of control. It was amazing.
That's so cool.
If you've ever been to Philadelphia, like on July 4th, and they read the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence from the steps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. Right? Like,
and
in there.
But and again, like important things. They speak to the Irish diaspora. They speak to the factionalization through religion. They speak to human rights.
Right.
Like, in a way, you can tell why they wanted to go through with it. In a way,
it's very modern.
It's so modern, but it's also so important, right? Like it's such an important statement to make in front of your people. And how much longer can you wait for something like that? And I know that they like, if everybody had heard it as it was delivered, right? Like it could be a very important rousing call, right? And again, you saw the flag of the Irish Republic. That is not the actual flag of Ireland as it is now. This is the flag that they raised right here, right? So that's the original flag that they raised over the General Post Office. That it says Irish Republic, right? And you see that it's got orange in it as well, and that's an important. There you go. Look at that. Dang, Dan.
Wow.
I have pins for days.
Out. So you see that, like that was like an important way of folks like it was an important statement and they just couldn't they just flat out couldn't wait. They had to bring the country together and so they made that announcement at 12:45. By 1 o'clock actually, by 1 o'clock they raised the flags. So it was the Irish tricolor, the green, white, and orange, and then the one that says Irish Republic.
Which, sorry, just as an aside, the Irish flag is actually it's beautiful. It's very simple, but the meaning behind it is great, right? Like the green, the orange, the white.
Yeah, and
if you orange, know, right?
Orange represents Protestantism, right?
The Protestants,
and the House of Orange, which is William and Mary, which are the people who took over Charles II as he was booted. So the son, Charles II, James II, sorry, James II, son of Charles II. All sorts of crazy stuff with English, but the orange represents that English part of Ireland and the deep hope of the Irish Republicans that they could reconcile with those people and say, don't let that factionalism deny who you are and your attachment to this land and our shared experiences.
Well, they're physically related to each other.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're cousins and sisters and brothers and grandparents. Like,
yeah.
Let's go on.
Yeah.
Sorry, not go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, thank you for bringing up that rabbit hole. I think it's important for us to discuss those things, right? So anyway, so by 4 p.m., the military response to the rising from the English begins in earnest. Now, I want to show you guys what a map of what the rebels were trying to do. You see this? The red line right there means like they would basically surround the city and cut it off. So at a series of strategic points and bridges, they basically cut off the city from the potential of reinforcements. But by 4 p.m., the British begin the response to the rising. And I think again, like okay, let's say we start an uprising. We start an uprising in California, and I just think to myself, okay, let's do the uprising in San Francisco, and we take over all of the major bridges around San Francisco. We declare the California Republic, and we expect the rest of the state to come with us. What we don't count on is who's going to fight on behalf of the government and who's going to fight on behalf of the republic. You know that in San Francisco, the majority of the population is probably behind you, right? Woo!
Right.
San Francisco is gonna lead the rebellion. But what you don't count on is all of the little pieces of establishment, military and armed personnel that already exist. And so basically at the snap of a finger, the British mobilize, you ready for this? Cops, detachments from the Army Musketry School. What? Like, oh yeah, there's an Army Musketry School. All right, there's 50 people, right? Oh, you have 200 people? cute. We have 50 in our Army musketry school.
Seems important in 1916.
Right, exactly.
But go on.
So people from ROTC in Trinity College, right? British and colonial servicemen on leave in Dublin. And within 24 hours, they're joined by the 25th Reserved Infantry Brigade, the 4th Royal Dublin Fusiliers, and the Ulster Composite Battalion from Belfast. And that's before they start actually putting like artillery and putting like real resources behind it.
Well, and sorry, go on. I want to look up one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick. Sorry.
I'll keep plugging away here. So by 7 p.m. that same day, they're already starting to get pushed back. Like all of their gains, the rebels are already starting to get pushed back. And in addition to that, the looting begins. The rebels storm into the gasworks and basically dismantle all of the machinery there, which leaves people, innocent people are getting killed, while they're taking German weapons, while they're overestimating the response that they're going to get from folks. There's also looting, food shortages, and disruption of daily life because of this rebellion, right? So what you're seeing is that like any popular support that they might have is already in danger on day one, because they're because this, you know.
And there's something going on here, and it happened again it happened in the American Civil War, is that British soldiers, whether they're Irish, Scottish, British, whatever, are being taken off the front lines because of this rebellion. Right. They're being sent to Dublin to squash it, and it happened, and we've all seen it. If you've seen Gangs of America, which is a great movie.
Gangs of New York.
Those people, Gangs of New York. You're right.
Jeez, Dan, Gangs of America. How many whiskeys have you already had, man?
410.
Okay.
Anyway,
Scratch
so, but right, like they're being brought from these battles where they're like, we're doing this.
Yeah.
And then we have to go deal with this shit.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
It's the war weariness, right? And so basically, like, but it's not even people from the Western Front, right? They still have to hold the Western Front. It's people who were about to go home, and it's people who were on leave, right?
And then they got diverted to Dublin
because they're being shot at in Dublin. And they were fighting alongside Irish not that long ago. So there's definitely like a lot of emotion that's going into this. Right. Okay, so like Monday is already falling apart. And this is day one of the whole thing. So by Tuesday, the British attack positions, huge battles. The British suffer losses, right? Because they haven't pulled all of their folks in yet. But by 4 o'clock, they're starting to use artillery already. And they sail into harbor areas, the British gun yacht, and basically that bakery that they took over, they destroy it. They obliterate it with the gun yacht Helga basically obliterates a bunch of...
They came up the river.
Yep.
They sent smaller boats up the river from the port. Ugh.
So by Wednesday, right? So it started on Monday. Tuesday, serious fighting. By Wednesday, tons of street fighting. It's being escalated by the British. And think about this: every day that continues is a day lost because people on the outskirts of this battle aren't joining in. So by Thursday, the British are in town. They're at their full strength, and they're just like, you know what, we're done, and they start destroying things, and they start attacking and destroying with abandon. The British government is like, we do not want to deal with this right now, so they get heavy-handed on the whole thing. The troops are war weary and upset. They get heavy-handed, and they take this opportunity to destroy a lot of like communications infrastructure, and basically like the infrastructure of Dublin, which is something that the British have done in the past. When there's a rebellion, they come down so hard that it causes hurt to the country and the people of Ireland.
Well, they brought in heavy artillery.
Yeah.
Right down the street.
Yeah.
They brought it right down the street on O'Connell Street and started opening up with the heavy artillery and cannons.
Yep. And so by Friday by the end of Thursday night, fires are ignited across Dublin. Shelling continues, and the GPO headquarters, the General Post Office headquarters, is cut off from everywhere else. Like at this point, like they've managed to isolate all of the groups so that they can't communicate and they can't coordinate, and they're just basically gonna just squash them one by one. And there's fires across Dublin, so the city is dark. Daily life has been disrupted. Food is starting to run out. Plus the General Post Office has now been shut down, and this is just so tragic, right? It's the span of a week, and less than a week, and we're already at this point. So Friday, April 28th, 1916, shelling resumes of the post office. Imagine shelling of a government building, of a post office building downtown, and that's exactly what it is. And there are pictures, and there's actually video of the of how the whole thing ended. And Dan, why don't we show one of your pictures actually right now?
Yeah, I mean those bullets are still there. So
yeah, and so this is actually one of Dan's vacation photos.
Yes.
And
So
literally everybody who knows about the 1960 rebellion and has been to Dublin has taken this picture. So I just want to say,
so
this is no big fucking deal, Dan. I have a
Right.
picture too, okay? But anyway,
so if you look at this
go ahead and tell
column,
everyone
you
about
can
the
see the bullet holes that are still there. I mean, I can't see that on this picture, but yeah, the bullet holes are still there. The shelling holes are still there. It's a fascinating thing to look at.
Is that better?
It is.
Anyway,
A little bit. It's fine.
yeah. So
I've been there.
there
I've
are
seen
still holes on the facade of the General Post Office.
Yeah.
And there's still scarring on the streets of where these like incredible battles took place. By 3:30 p.m., by mid-morning, by 10:45 a.m., all rebel positions are surrounded by British troops.
Mm-hmm.
Most positions are being shelled, and all locations are seeing intense sniper fire. By 3:30 p.m., the walls of the General Post Office have been damaged by flames and artillery fire and have begun to collapse. By 5 p.m., the occupation of the General Post Office has ended. The building is on fire, and the first party of 20 rebels is told to evacuate and head towards Moore Street. And as soon as they try to evacuate, they get mowed down by machine guns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Basically, at this point, they're into like, okay, we're going to do diversionary charges. And so they lead like 12 men at a time charge out of one side of the post office in order to let other people run out the other side. So a guy named Tiocfaidh, sorry guys, sorry to his family. He's killed. He's one of the leaders, and he is shot. He dragged himself into the back of a shop on 25 Moore Street, writes a last letter to his wife while he's dying, and then dies of his wounds. Right, and this is where we begin, like the stories of martyrdom and just the disaster. Right, so by like 9-10 o'clock at night, Pierce orders the entire evacuation of the General Post Office. Men and women rush from the building in small groups towards Henry Street. They're all fired on. Patrick Pierce is the last man to leave the General Post Office, right? So like real leadership, like I'm going to stay behind. And again, that sense of poetry and like martyrdom, and the reason I asked that question of was martyrdom the goal is because the steps that they take, the bravery and also the futility of it, it's not very efficacious, but it is very poetic. And I think that as theater kids, and that's why we kind of like we're enamored with this moment in history, because it is so hapless and it's so
well, and
stark, but they also like the drama behind it is just unbelievable.
Patrick Pearse was an English teacher, a literature teacher,
right?
So there you go.
Yeah. So by the end of the evening, the whole thing, they've all run into Moore Street. They're followed by the British. The post office has collapsed, leaving only a shell of the building. On Saturday, the 29th, they do a last stand on Moore Street. Connolly has already been wounded by a ricochet, so he's not doing so hot. And by 3:30 p.m., Pearse and Connolly surrender, and Connolly is carried to the barricade and handed over to the British on a stretcher. Yeah. So by Sunday the 30th, less than a week before it officially began, like a week after it officially began, but less than a week before shots were originally fired, it's over. And more than 1,000 men and women are held prisoner by the British authorities at that time. Eventually, they'll arrest up to 3,500 people. 3,500 people get arrested. And then begins the classic, like heavy-handed British colonial kind of trials. And 90 men are sentenced to death. And all of those executions begin with the execution of Patrick Pearse, MacDonald, and Clark. And then they conclude on May 12th. So you think about this, basically 9 days of nonstop execution of 90 men.
Right. And here's where the British went wrong. Nobody in Ireland cared about the uprising. But once those people were started to be executed, then it became a thing, right? That's where this, almost you could say everything that we're dealing with today in Ireland, it started with those executions, right? Like nobody even showed up to the uprising.
But
once they just started, killing them literally in a chair.
Yeah,
it was over. Then the Irish people were done. Enough is enough. We're done with this.
I'm gonna take a moment here to kind of disagree with you about nobody cared about the thing. I think nobody showed up.
Okay.
I think nobody showed up because it got messed up from the start. I think that there was potential for a greater insurgency there. There were folks that could have shown up that didn't because so many things went wrong leading up to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like if it's like if your team makes the playoffs, you're more into it than if they don't. Like if you look like they're not going to make it, right? And so I feel like the first part of the rebellion would have been making it out of the playoffs. If they see that oh my gosh, we do have a chance here. We've got weapons from Germany. We've got an uprising across the country. It's not just localized in Dublin. And we've got all of these things going. I think a lot of folks would have come out of their shells in support of this. But because all of those different pieces didn't come together at the same time, right? Like that's the thing about most revolutions is that they pick up steam. The moment the revolution loses steam even a little bit is when it goes under, right? And that's a little bit of what worries me right now about like we look at the resistance movement here in the U.S. and how much steam it's lost since the days of protests against children being locked up in cages, and in the days of like the Women's March, where millions of people marched across the country. Like that passion and fire has been worn down. There's a certain amount of exhaustion, and you cannot have like a movement that gets tuckered out, right? It's got to keep going. So I think what happened was it got tuckered out, and that flame is quenched quickly. I don't think I wouldn't say that it was for a lack of passion and caring. And what you're saying about the executions being the rallying point shows that people actually did care. So let's talk about those executions, because I think
which comes back to the martyrdom argument you were making earlier.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So let's. And by the way, this is a copy of the Republic, the Proclamation of the Republic. And if you look at that, and you look at my mug, right? Like they've got like the whole thing. It's written on there. Like that is as famous as "We the People," right? Or the word in a declaration. Gee, look at that.
Right.
So I just wanted to make sure folks saw it. So let's talk about those executions, Dan, because there's songs, and there's a whole culture that went around those executions, and I do believe that it has a lot to do with like Catholic martyrdom. So why don't you talk a little bit about those?
Well, they started. I'm not an expert on it, but they started with. There were a lot of people that didn't do a lot of things. I mean, they participated in the uprising, but like they didn't. There's no evidence that they killed people or sniped people or did anything, but like they just started killing people.
Yeah.
I mean, the British did. They literally just started death, death, death,
yeah.
death. And it got so ugly. And you know, honestly, I would say it's one of the major mistakes of the British. If they had shown more mercy, I wonder how hard it would have been in the upcoming war for Irish independence in the 1919, right? Like they basically threw gas on a fire.
Yeah,
with these executions, and like look at this jail. Like this is a picture I sent you.
Yeah,
and look at this jail. I mean,
and
you can go visit that jail.
Kilmainham Jail was a jail from the Victorian era in Dublin, where they kept a lot of these folks.
It's a dump.
Leaders like Patrick Pearse and James Connolly. James Connolly was shot in and in fact, I think this is where they executed most of those guys.
They did. But if you could not stand up, they would just tie you to a chair and then shoot you.
And that's what they did to James Connolly.
Right.
So,
and that really pissed off everybody.
Yeah, and you can imagine James Connolly being the sort of like revolutionary, right? And he's been wounded in this action. And there's a song about James Connolly being killed. That's just beautiful, and it's one of my favorite like Irish revolutionary songs, and I'll post it to our Facebook page when I'm out of Facebook jail. Okay. Yeah,
okay.
We'll talk about that some other day.
So this is not an actual chair, just so everyone knows. I took this picture. This is a exhibit in a Dublin museum. That is not the actual chair, but just. It's a good representation of
and actually this is so I'm going to show the actual space in Kilmainham Jail, or maybe not. I just deleted it, and it was cool. So I'm not going to show it because I deleted the wrong picture. But it's important. That space, Kilmainham Jail, and all of these different like moments. Here we go. I am going to show it now. So it takes on like sort of places of pilgrimage. And here's here's the courtyard where the executions took place in Kilmainham jail. As you can see, there's soldiers. This is the birthplace of a country. And if you guys look at the little hobbit in the middle there laying the wreath, that's the president of Ireland. He is. I want to say shorter than our delineation of 5. What's our danger stature? 5'4".
Danger stature, sir, is 5'4".
Yeah, 5'4" is danger stature for. I want to say that Michael Higgins, the president of Ireland, is shorter than 5'4". We can if one of you guys want to Google that while I'm
that is good. Here. I guarantee you though, his uppercut is deadly.
Right?
I don't know, man.
Well, this is why people always wanted to fight with what was his name from N64 GoldenEye? Oddjob. Everybody loved to fight with Oddjob because he was shorter than the gun, you know.
Right. Oddjob with slaps only. Slaps only.
Slappers only.
A deadly combination.
Don't get me started.
Because no one could slap Oddjob, and he would just literally slap you.
You just slapped the air above his head. Yeah. I mean, it was a great. And then if you remained in the crouch position and went forward, absolutely no one could hit you. Am I wrong? Am I wrong?
You are absolutely not wrong on that. You're absolutely right.
Jameson.
If Michael Higgins, the president of Ireland, was a character on GoldenEye, his uppercut would be
right. Unreal. And you could never slap him. You'd have to get in the crouch position.
No.
Yeah, you'd have to crouch down. Listen, Wikipedia and Google are both saying 5'4" for President Higgins.
No way.
Yeah.
He's right there at the danger zone. And
he's
just
on the cusp.
Here we go. So just real quick, since we're on the subject of President Higgins here, as you can see, he is either a hobbit or a dwarf. I think he's a hobbit because he has no beard. And he does have a dog that he takes with him everywhere.
Love it.
I have a friend who lives in Dublin who, at one point, posted on his Twitter, "Oh my God, the president of Ireland just walked into this pub with his dog and ordered a pint."
Mm.
And I think that, like, look, Michael Higgins is a treasure. Like, he's a national treasure. The role of the president in Ireland is more symbolic than it is like practical. They've got a prime minister, which
I know the feeling. No.
The prime minister. No, I was exhaling because I'm going to murder the pronunciation. Taoiseach.
Oh, wait. I'll do it.
Anyway, so the president of Ireland is different. Anyway, so ultimately what happens after the rebellion of 1916 is the important formative parts of the Irish Republic. A man named Taoiseach, that's what it is. A man named Eamon de Valera and a man named Michael Collins become really important in the forming of what Ireland is to become. Right here is a picture of Professor Snape, who also.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
Well, no, it was played by him, right? Let's talk about Eamon for a minute.
Alan Rickman.
Yeah. So
love that man.
Go ahead.
So his mother's Irish, his father is Spanish. He's born in New York City. He's an American, and becomes the first, honestly, kind of a dictator of Ireland.
Ooh.
For a few years.
Yeah. So he was hyper religious, and I think that was. And so the original, like, James Connolly socialist stuff kind of died with Eamon de Valera. Because he kind of brought it home to like really like deep Catholicism. But I think
not that Irish, which I think is so interesting.
Yeah.
He's as Irish as a lot of Americans. Like, we could all be dictators of Ireland.
but I think while his conservative roots are important to note, and he was at the post office, was part of the Easter uprising, was there the whole time. He was a revolutionary, very similar to Kim Il Sung, right? And so I think that worth noting that despite his reactionary inclinations, Eamon de Valera, he was around until the 60s, right?
Yes.
Eamon de Valera
there for a
survived
long time
and more. So
he's the reason you cannot drink on Christmas Day.
There you go, Eamon de Valera. And so Eamon de Valera, Michael Collins, and a bunch of the folks that survived this 1916 GPO would then later start a guerrilla war.
You can't.
Sorry? Okay. So they would start a guerrilla war. I think you froze, Dan, so careful there. But there you are, you're back. So they started a guerrilla war that would eventually end up in the Irish Republic. And then the Irish Republic then had its own in-faction fighting. And then even the British occupation of a partitioned Ireland, Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, those struggles continue to this day. And a couple of years back, a woman was killed. A reporter was killed in Derry, Northern Ireland, which is a place that I love and that has some of the most glorious, wonderful people. That place, she died. But the Easter 1916 uprising has become a really important part of Irish self-determination, but also like a concept of what it means to be Irish. And here's a really great picture of the Countess, and you see Patrick Pearse and James Connolly here. This is a romanticization of the Eastern Uprising in a relatively modern, probably 70s mural here in Northern Ireland. You see the American flag up there and the Easter lilies, meaning the Easter. There was the Easter Rebellion, and then again the Easter compromise. There's an Easter lily that Dan's showing. So the symbolism from this 1916 rebellion lives to this day in Ireland and in how the Irish express themselves. And then I just want to show a couple of more pictures here. This is something that came out soon after, right in the 20s. And we see here the relationship of the 1916 fighters as martyrs and their martyrdom, and how they are pictured and how they're spoken to, right? And so you can defeat if you're Catholic, martyrs are next to saints, and Eamon de Valera had a good hand in the way that was communicated to folks, and the idea of martyrs for the faith and for Ireland, and ultimately that took on and that elevated the failed rebellion in 1916 to something bigger than it was. So I just want to show a couple more pictures that Dan sent, because these are all part of his show and tell. So Dan, what is this? Talk to us about this picture.
So this is Michael Connolly's revolver. So that's and he was at the post office. He was with Eamon, and then he became the leader. He was sent over to London to work out the treaty, and he was a pro-treaty, and that's what the Irish Rebellion, the Irish Civil War was about: pro-treaty and anti-treaty. He was a pro-treaty, and that's his revolver.
Yeah, and the treaty basically was just like partition and home rule, right?
It's what we have now, basically.
Yeah.
To a degree, yeah, you're right, Alf. Sorry. It was partition, a little more heavy-handed from London. It's not quite as free as Ireland was, which is totally its own thing now.
Yeah.
But it was a start. It was the Irish Free State, as it was called.
Exactly. And what's this, Dan? You also sent this as part of your show.
Oh, this is really cool. So these, as they were evacuating the post office, they were literally digging under the streets to get out. And so this is a tunnel. This is in the Ambassador Theater, which is probably about maybe a block away from the post office, that they had hammered out. And this is one of their evacuation routes. And what you see below me is the tunnel. And then that sort of square thing is a mirror pointing down the tunnel, so you can see it at the museum.
Cool. And
yeah, it's awesome.
What is this?
So, and then they went to, you mentioned Moore Street. So O'Connell Street is the main street, and then Moore Street is the street behind it. After they sort of chiseled their way out through the theater, they went into people's houses, and they were starting to dig their way out of houses. Like, it got really bad for these people. So they literally dug a square so that they can move between houses. So you're looking at one house, and you're looking into a separate house where the revolutionaries in 1916 had chiseled their way out.
Wow.
And that's what that is.
Yeah. I mean, and the people that got out, like barely got out. Eamon de Valera was actually caught, and his life was spared because he was an American. And Michael Collins got spared because he was a minor figure and not worth anybody's time. And later on, he'd come and give them hell. And if anybody wants to watch the Liam Neeson movie, by the way.
Good.
It's fantastic. It's
great. I love it.
Fantastic. It's such a good movie. Great representation, simple telling of the story. Love it. And so one last show and tell from Dan here. And that is this picture.
All right. So this is my show and tell. This is at a commemoration at the jail where they not where they were executed, but where their bodies are. So we were in a cemetery, and that's the missus and me, and that handsome, and he is handsome, man in the back is Jerry Adams, who is the head of the Sinn Féin party. He's a sitting member of parliament in absentia. And what can I say? He probably knows where a lot of the bodies are.
Yeah, I mean, Jerry Adams is so the fight against the British in Ireland continued into the 80s and continues to this day. And I think it's Jerry Adams really led Sinn Féin, which is the direct descendant of the 1916 in basically it's other side.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, is it up here? There it is. That's so many pins.
Yeah, there it is. SF Sinn Féin. But Sinn Féin led basically like a guerrilla war of terrorism against the British in the 80s and 70s. And Jerry Adams, the guy pictured here with Dan, is definitely like one of these folks. And he was part of a peace agreement. But
Good Friday Agreement, 1997.
Yeah,
Clinton.
But nobody who was part of politics either in Northern Ireland at that period in time escaped without doing some horrible things. And like, I know that we kind of tread some dangerous ground sometimes on this podcast about like who's a revolutionary and who's a terrorist. And that's because that's how history is, by the way, you guys. I mean,
right, absolutely.
And if there's a living, breathing human who walks that line dangerously every day, it's the man pictured here with Dan, Jerry Adams.
So
definitely.
Can I tell a quick story? I won't make it long. So we were there for the 1916 anniversary, and there was a parade outside of our hotel. And we followed the parade, and we went up this street and up that street, and then we went into this jail, this courtyard. And some people started talking, and they said, now for our main speaker, Jerry Adams. I was jumping up and down. I was grabbing Sarah's coat, and she's like, who is Jerry Adams? And I was like, he possibly a terrorist, but an interesting guy.
Yeah.
And then Sarah, God love my wife, she pushed her way past a ton of people and got us that quick photo. And he said to her, he goes, he has a beautiful Irish baritone. Where are you from? And she was like, Chicago. And he really liked that. So There we are with Jerry Adams.
That's
amazing
picture, Dan. That is so cool.
Isn't it nuts?
Funny. So that is the rebellion of 1916, which obviously ends with Dan in a picture with Jerry Adams, and I think that encapsulates it. Just kind of as a note to leave off on. There's so much more to this, and the characters involved, and the socio-economic and artistic world that surrounded this moment. There's song, there's dance, plays. There's a lot to explore in the world of the 1916 and rebellious Ireland. And if there's one thing you will fall in love with, it is the joy and passion of the Irish people as they plug their way through the most difficult path to freedom possible. And I would urge anybody who loves stories of revolution to take a moment and see what centuries of colonialism and colonial rule, how they still cannot extinguish the flame of love and freedom for a people, and see how up until recently and how it continues in Ireland. So that's my parting thought, my go get 'em. And then let's do some more. Brassy, do you have any show and tell?
My show and tell is limited because I never got up into Ireland personally, but as a recommendation for folks that are interested in this but don't know where to start, Dairy Girls.
Oh.
Now look, I know that seems
no
antithetical to the seriousness of this topic, but I learned more about what it was like from their perspective by watching Dairy Girls than I ever have watching Michael Collins or In the Name of the Father or Father Ted or I mean there's so much great entertainment and historical literature coming out of Ireland, and they gave us Colin Farrell, bless him for that. But there's a lot to be said for how much a civilization or a culture can turn a tragedy into a beautiful story, into a beautiful lyrical song that you hear wafting through the night, coming out of a pub in the middle of the night. There's so much to love about this, and I adore the Irish, even though I have not a drop of blood in me that I know of. I adore that they're just so rugged, and they have a sense of humor, much like the Australians. It's like they know they're not here for a long time. They're here for a good time.
Right. Well, the Australians are Irish in a large portion, right?
Yeah.
Oh God, shit. Yeah. I forget that minor detail. We did ship the Irish down there.
So I do want to say a couple of things about Dairy Girls. Is that it takes place in the 90s. As the tensions between Protestants and Catholics in Northern Ireland are reaching an untenable culmination, right?
Yeah.
Like people are just tired of it, and these kids are also high schoolers and they're teenagers. And so what's amazing about the show Dairy Girls is that it puts, when you're a teenager, the stakes are high on everything, right?
Yeah.
Like talking to a boy is high
Yes.
stakes. Going out to eat with your family is high stakes.
Yes.
And you put those high stakes in the backdrop of a high stakes situation, and it humanizes the entire thing in a way that's just, it's beautiful. It's poetic. It's a great show. Good call on that show and tell, Brassy. I think Dairy Girls is an amazing show and tell. So my show and tell is last week what brought us here was last week's show and tell. Was what I showed you guys, like the medal and the armband. And I did some crafting.
Oh, that's nice. That looks good.
Isn't that nice?
You did that by
Look
yourself.
at that. What?
That looks great. You did that by yourself.
It's nice, right? Yeah.
Yes.
How about that?
Good job.
Yeah. So that's
awesome.
So I did some crafting, and now I'm gonna hang this in my office before I move. But anyway, that was our show That's amazing. Just a little bit over 90 minutes, an hour and a half. Congrats, Stu. We did it.
Nice
and
work.
And I think we're gonna basically sign off with the reading of woo.
Let's do one more shot for everybody who went down.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, let's do it.
Do one shot.
Let's drink a drink to the immortal memory of the freedom fighters of the Irish Republic who took a stand against the tyranny of the colonizers and created the modern republic that is now thriving. Cheers.
Sláinte.
To Aaron.
Sláinte. Aaron Gobrock. So to leave us, oh God. To leave us, I'm gonna show part of the centennial 1916 to 2016 celebrations, and it's a really hokey video put together by the Irish Broadcasting Company. But I think of import is that that it speaks to this notion of Ireland being larger than the land that it inhabits. And speaking to the Irish diaspora, and they really make a large effort to do that. It is super cheesy because, it just is.
They probably had to just make it safe to show everybody.
No, man, it's like you can do safe and not do some of these things. But yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Dan and myself out of the video, so that if we want to chime in on this as it's going, we can.
She's very Irish.
So these two women are descendants of the 1916 rebellion. And the modern uniforms are based on the uniforms of the Irish volunteers, which I think is pretty amazing.
So if I can chime in here as we're watching this, they did a big parade with the Irish armed forces, and let's just say it's not quite like the United States.
It's a small country.
They have served in some very beautiful and valuable sort of situations with the UN, but we are not talking big M1A1 Abram tanks.
No,
you know what I mean?
I find this interesting. Fort Dundee in Ulster flies the Republic flag. That seemed kind of interesting to me.
That is interesting.
Yeah, we need to do some research on
that.
Well,
I'll tell you what. If you've never been to Ireland and you get a chance to go, do yourself a favor. Go out to the islands. They are nuts.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Irish men and Irish women, in the name of God and the dead generations from which she received her old tradition of nationhood, Ireland, through us, summons her children to her flag and strikes for her freedom.
Having organised and trained her manhood through her secret revolutionary organisation,
the Irish Republican Brotherhood, and through her open military organisations, the Irish Volunteers and the Irish Citizen Army.
Having patiently perfected her discipline,
having resolutely waited for the right moment to reveal itself,
she now seizes that moment.
And is supported by her exiled children in America and by gallant allies in Europe,
but relying in the first on her own strength.
She strikes with full confidence of victory.
We declare the right of the people of Ireland to the ownership of Ireland
and to the unfettered control of Irish destiny.
To be sovereign and indefeasible.
The long usurpation of that right by a foreign people and government
has not extinguished the right,
nor can it ever be extinguished except by the destruction of the Irish people.
In every generation, the Irish people have asserted their right to national freedom and sovereignty.
6 times during the past 2 years they have asserted it in arms. standing on that fundamental right
Hollywood,
and again,
Hollywood.
asserting it in arms in the face of the world.
We hereby proclaim the Irish Republic as a sovereign, independent state.
And we pledge our lives and the lives of our comrades in arms
to the cause of its freedom, of its welfare, and of its exaltation among the nations.
The Irish Republic is entitled to, and hereby claims, the allegiance of every Irishman and Irishwoman.
The Republic guarantees religious and civil liberty, equal rights,
and equal opportunities to all its citizens, and declares its resolve to pursue the happiness and prosperity
of
the whole nation and all its parts,
cherishing all the children of the nation equally and oblivious of the differences carefully fostered by an alien government,
which have divided a minority from the majority in the past,
until our arms have brought the opportune moment for the establishment of a permanent
national government, representative of the whole people of Ireland, and elected by subjects of all men and women. The provisional government, hereby constituted, will administer the civil and military affairs of the Republic in trust for the people.
We place the cause of the Irish Republic under the protection of the Most High God,
whose blessing we invoke upon our arms.
And we pray that no one who serves that cause will dishonour it by cowardice, inhumanity, or rapine.
In this supreme hour, the Irish nation must, by its valour and discipline,
and by the readiness of its children to sacrifice themselves for the common good, prove itself worthy of the august destiny to which it is called.
You know? Right? All right, guys. Have a good one. And
all right.
We'll talk next week.
All right.